back to Gaming, Gains, and Geekery. This is episode 7. Today I do not have a guest. I have been working to get some more guests booked and having a little bit of trouble making schedules match right now, but we'll have some guests again very soon. But for today, I am back, Jason Ward, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of what I'm doing in the Gaming, Gains, and Geekery vein. So, as usual, we'll start with gaming. So, what have I been playing lately? I have picked up Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga for the Nintendo Switch. So, most of the gaming that I do is on the Switch, and I am not at all disappointed with this game. If you're not familiar with Lego games, they're pretty straightforward. You collect studs, you travel around areas and find secrets, and you can improve your characters over time. So you've got like a little bit of an RPG element to a lot of these games. And they usually like to use different franchises to create these games. So there's all sorts of different Lego games available. Lego Marvel Heroes, Lego DC Villains, Lego Jurassic World, like you name it, they probably have a Lego version for you to play if you were so inclined. The Skywalker Saga takes a lot of what makes Lego games a lot of fun and just continues to work with them. And I don't know if you've ever played a Lego Star Wars game before. I remember the first one that I ever played was the GameCube version, Lego Star Wars, and it was all 6 of the films at the time. So there was no sequel trilogy yet then, so you just had Phantom Menace through the Return of the Jedi on that original, and I played the hell out of that game. I don't even remember how many hours I would have put in, and back then we didn't have a little log on our computer on the Nintendo system to tell you how many hours you had put into the game. It was a newer addition to gaming. So yeah, I don't even remember how many hours I put into that game, but I played it a lot. Thoroughly enjoyed that game beginning to end. Being a giant Star Wars nerd definitely helped, I think, make that game a lot of fun for me. But it's also just easy to pick up and start playing the game. Honestly, like that means that literally anybody, you don't have to be a hardcore gamer, can just pick up this game, start playing, and get some enjoyment out of it. Like the level of difficulty is not so high that you need to be like avid gamer in order to enjoy the game, but it's not so low that you need to be or that you won't get any enjoyment out of the game because there's no challenge. It really walks the line between like being just challenging enough and being just easy enough that literally anybody could pick up the game and play. If you wanted to get like really deep into the game and the gameplay mechanics, you can, and you can do a lot of very interesting stuff with Lego Star Wars. I mean, I've only, I think, put in 15 or 20 hours of the game so far, but there's so much more for me to explore. I'm a bit of a completionist, so I've really only finished the Phantom Menace. I went through and 100%ed everything, and then I realized that that's probably not going to work because there's elements of the game that are going to be very difficult for me to obtain, trying to go linearly through the story. So I think I'm probably going to go back, do the whole story mode first to finish each of the individual episodes, and then go back and explore all of the different galaxy aspects of the game. As I think like it's only reading at like 4.5% explored or something right now after having finished the whole Phantom Menace story at 100%. So there's plenty of gameplay to pull you back in and get you playing. And I also bought the deluxe edition so I could get the Mandalorian pack and the Han Solo, or the Solo Star Wars story, Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Like they have 5 or 6 different packs that come with the deluxe edition for just like $10 more. It's pretty good price, to be honest, to get a bunch of extra characters and ships that you can play with throughout the course of the game. So honestly, I really feel like it's well worth the investment, whether you are a casual gamer or a more avid, intense gamer. Definitely consider picking up Star Wars, Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. it's fantastic. I cannot say enough good about this game. Thoroughly enjoyed. 10 out of 10 would recommend to anybody who's interested in playing some Star Wars. So that is all that I have to say about that, though. So let's move on. So today in the Gainz category, I wanted to talk a little bit about carbohydrates, or carbs, if you will. So this is a topic that I do talk a lot about in various different areas, and I've talked with people at length about these concepts, and simply like, why are you still beating this dead horse? Because I don't feel that it's a dead horse. Carbohydrates are still vilified by a lot of people, by a lot of fitness influencers, by a lot of doctors, by a lot of people out there. Just they're not well informed on what carbohydrates are, why they can be beneficial, and reasons that you probably shouldn't avoid them. So let's start with why carbs are vilified. So people have been coming after carbs for quite some time now. Keto is extremely popular, and I think that's probably the biggest reason that carbs are getting vilified by a lot of people right now, because they've been fed all this information from the keto camp, and all of these people who feel that carbohydrates are going to keep you out of ketosis. They're going to like cause fat gain, and they're going to like ruin your ability to lose body fat. None of those things are true. Well, actually, except for the ketosis thing, that's actually true. But you don't need to be in ketosis at all times to be getting the benefits of ketones. And the ketone system is not necessarily beneficial in the long term for the human body. It is there as a short-term system to help us cope with periods where we have less carbohydrate available. So if you think about like from an evolutionary perspective, we evolved consuming with like a hunter-gatherer type of approach to food. So we would go out and hunt for meat, animals like wild game, to get our proteins, and then we would be gathering up nuts and seeds and berries and other foods to round out our diet a little bit. There would be periods where we would have less access to the fruits and nuts and seeds and that kind of thing, because a lot of those foods are very seasonal, and depending on like what part of the world you're living in, you may not have year-round access to those foods. So what would the body do in those cases? Well, we need to have a system in place to allow us to deal with that lack of access. So the body developed the ketone. Ketones is just another form of energy the body can use when carbohydrates are scarce. It's not meant to be something that we stay on forever. Something that can cycle in and out of your diet from time to time. Sure, if you enjoy eating that way, it's a perfectly viable option. But it's not necessary to eat that way all of the time. And if you are feeling burnt out, feeling lethargic, and you're like finding that you're having trouble continuing to lose weight when you're doing keto, that may be why. I can't say that for sure, of course. I don't know you, I don't know your situation, but there does generally come a point with keto where people need to start cycling in some carbohydrates again and pull away from keto for a bit, and then maybe come back and kind of have a cyclical approach to their keto dieting. I felt like I was going to sneeze there for a second. I still might. All right. So a cyclical approach to keto dieting is definitely better, in my opinion, than trying to stay on keto long term. I don't think it's ideal for people to constantly have their carbs at such a low level. I think that you do need to get in and out of ketosis from time to time in order to derive maximum benefit from your diet. So why do we need carbs? There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. This is something that a lot of the keto people and a lot of people that are like hardcore advocates for low carb dieting will say. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. And while that is technically true, the body will produce all of the carbohydrate it needs in order to function. It does not represent what's necessarily optimal for the human body. So depending on your activity level, what sort of things you need to be doing, having carbohydrate can help you perform better. So that's both either like mentally or physically. So in terms of like mentally, the brain runs off of glucose. That's the primary source of energy. It can function on ketones, but it's not an ideal scenario for the brain. It functions better with glucose. So there is a fine line that needs to be walked there where you can be consuming too much carbohydrate and kind of like feeling lethargic and that kind of thing, but that's not necessarily where everybody is going to be. So the physical side, so like performance in sport, performance in the weight room, like when we're working out, carbohydrates will fuel your performance much better than fats will. The system that utilizes fat for energy is a much slower production of energy, so your power output tends to be much lower. You can sometimes sustain that lower output for a longer period of time with fats, so carbohydrates tend to be a faster energy source. But that does not mean that you wouldn't benefit from carbohydrate in longer duration activity as well. So like runners, cyclists, like swimmers, all of them will utilize carbohydrate to help fuel their performance in those long steady state type activities, and they perform better generally speaking when they're incorporating carbohydrate. And if you even look at some like ultra marathoners who tend to follow more like low carb keto style diets, a lot of them still incorporate glucose in some form around their big runs or their big bikes or swims or whatever the case might be. And the reason is because they see the benefit for their performance. Now, there is a line to be walked there as well, because if you just don't eat carbs all the time and then like you try to carb up right before a big event, your body's going to have trouble digesting those foods. So you do need to be aware of how long it takes your body to reacclimatize to taking in carbohydrate. You will not immediately see a benefit bringing carbohydrate back into your diet. It may take some time and some getting used to and a gradually scaling up of your carb intake in order to really notice the benefits. And even then, you need to be paying attention to notice those benefits. And most of us spend so much of our time not paying attention to what is going on within our own body that it's astounding to me. The very first thing I teach most of my clients is to start having more awareness around how the food they're eating makes them feel, how they sleep, how they perform. Paying attention to all of those things will give you a good idea of what direction you should be taking your diet, your nutrition. Because like some people will function better on a slightly lower carbohydrate intake, some people function better on a much higher carbohydrate intake. And finding that sweet spot for you and like which foods will be best is key to getting the most out of yourself, so you perform at your best, so you feel your best, so you are functioning at your best. So finally, like, why are carbs vilified so much? And I think there is also a misconception around what carbs actually are. So like, for instance, a potato, plain potato, nothing on it, is a carb source, right? But you can also load that potato with bacon and cheese and salt and like sour cream and whatever it is that you enjoy on your potato to make it taste better, but it also boosts the fat content. So when you increase your carbs and your fats at the same time, you have is a almost bypassing signal for your body, where it's like, oh, this tastes really good, let's eat more of it. You don't get full. You are no longer satiated or satisfied after you've finished a meal that has a high amount of carbohydrate and fat in it. And this is why people think that carbs are bad. Because for the most part, when you ask somebody what they're cutting out when they're going to cut out carbs, what are the typical answers? Pizza, like potato chips, cookies, ice cream. What do all of those foods have in common? They are very high fat and high carbohydrate at the same time. That, although like people will still consider all of those carbs, they're not carbs and fats, even though that's actually what they are. So people have this misconception about what carbohydrates are and how to use them properly. So like I said, a baked potato with nothing on it, fruits, You can have pastas and breads. Like pastas and breads can be problematic for some people. You can get into a gluten argument there, and like wheat does seem to have some negative impact on some people, but basically like those are the types of carbohydrates you can eat. They tend to be higher carb and lower fat and a little bit of protein in some cases as well. That's typically better for you than consuming your pizzas, your ice cream, your chips, your cookies. While those things are delicious, and I am never going to tell people not to eat them because I'm going to keep eating them as long as I can, but moderation becomes very important, and it's very difficult to moderate highly palatable, tasty foods like those. It's much easier to dummy an entire frozen pizza or an entire tub of ice cream than it is to dummy an entire baked potato with nothing on it. You're going to get bored of that potato really quickly. You will not get bored with that pizza or with that ice cream or those cookies, right? You just keep going back for more. It's really hard to stop yourself. And that's because they are two very different types of food. So you need to make sure you understand what carbohydrates actually are, how they can benefit your performance, and how best to use them inside of your diet. They should not be vilified. Am I saying that you should be eating 2, 3, 400, 500 grams of carbs a day? No, that's not what I'm getting at. But you should not fear carbohydrates and think that you need to eat like less than 50 or 100 grams per day in order for you to achieve your goals. That's not necessary. It could help, and it might be a good short-term solution for you if it helps you adhere to your diet in the long term. But that's the key. Is it helping you adhere to your diet or not? All right? Hopefully that helps you guys understand carbohydrates a little bit better. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Fire me a message on Instagram, whatever. Ask away. I love to talk about this stuff, so I'm happy to help you try to make sense of everything that's happening in the fitness industry. All right, so lastly, today in the Geekery category, I want to talk about an animated series. I watched it a little while ago, but I didn't really talk about it because I didn't really have this podcast yet. And that is Arcane. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. It is based off of the video game League of Legends, which is not a game that I have played, but I still thoroughly enjoyed this television series. It is on Netflix, or was on Netflix. I guess when you watch this video, whenever that may be, maybe that's changed. Who knows what the future will hold. So Arcane is based off of League of Legends. A smaller studio made this, and they did a phenomenal job. The art style is incredible. It's like semi-realistic, so well done. The story that they used is so well put together, and it builds so well. And like, I'm nervous for them to do any more because, as I understand it, they took over 2 years to put this first season together. And I feel like if they're going to do any more, it's going to wind up being a little bit rushed. But when you're massively successful, sometimes you get a lot more money, and then it's a lot easier to get work done in a shorter time frame. It's amazing how money will change that, hey? But if you have not checked it out yet, I believe it was 8 episodes. They're like 30 to 45 minutes or something like that, I think. I can't even remember. I was so riveted with the show the whole time that I didn't even notice how much time was passing. I had to stop myself a few times from like binging all 8 episodes in one go because I wanted to kind of like sit and digest it a little bit, because it's got a really well interconnected story with a lot of parts trying to figure out like what's happening in this universe and like where is this story going, and wanted time to kind of like sit and think and stew with it. I'll probably return to this series again, watch it all over, because it was supremely well done. As I said, if you have not had a chance to check it out yet, I highly recommend that you do. And let me know what you think. Did you like it? Maybe you didn't like it. It's totally subjective. That's the thing with these mediums. Sometimes they're not as good to other people as they are to us. It happens all the time. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong. I mean, if you don't agree with me, then I think you're wrong. But that's fine. Of course I'm kidding. Your opinion is valid too, but not if it conflicts with mine. Okay, but seriously, check it out. Let me know what you think. If you like the video today, please like the video, comment, let me know what you think about the content that I'm producing. Maybe you have somebody you'd like to see me do an interview with. You can put us in contact with one another. That'd be great. Love to have more guests. Thoroughly enjoy doing those ones as well. If there is a game or a movie or a TV show or something you'd like me to review on the channel, just let me know and I'll put a video together for you looking at those particular things. But that's it. So again, please like the video, subscribe, continue to enjoy my content. You can check out the whole Gaming and Gainz series under the Gaming and Gainz playlist whenever you've got the time. All right, that's it for me today. You guys have a good one.